Such a terrible display. Justin Gaethje vs. Paddy Pimblett thriller at UFC 324 leaves MMA world deeply divided. The MMA world thrives on chaos, controversy, and conversation, but even by those standards, the aftermath of the reported Justin Gaethje vs. Paddy Pimblett clash at UFC 324 has ignited one of the most polarized debates in recent UFC history. What some fans hailed as an unforgettable thriller, others condemned as a technical disaster, with criticism coming from fighters, analysts, and longtime observers of the sport. The phrase that has echoed across social media timelines, podcasts, and post-fight panels, "such a terrible display," perfectly captures the emotional divide. Was the bout a raw, brutal spectacle that embodied MMA's wild soul? Or was it an undisciplined brawl that undermined elite-level competition? As reactions continue to pour in, UFC 324 may be remembered less for its official results and more for the arguments it sparked. A matchup few expected, but everyone watched. On paper, Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett represent two very different eras and philosophies of MMA. Gaethje, a former interim lightweight champion and perennial top contender, has built his reputation on controlled violence, measured pressure, devastating leg kicks, and the kind of experience earned through years of elite competition. Pimblett, meanwhile, is one of the UFC's most polarizing figures, a charismatic, unpredictable fighter whose meteoric rise has been fueled as much by personality as by performance. The pairing itself raised eyebrows. Critics questioned whether Pimblett had done enough to warrant a matchup with someone of Gaethje's caliber. Supporters argued that MMA has always been about proving yourself when the opportunity arises, regardless of resume. Whatever the doubts, the fight delivered exactly what the UFC hoped for: attention. The fight, chaos over craft. From the opening moments, it was clear that this would not be a traditional, tactical chess match. Gaethje pressed forward with trademark aggression, targeting Pimblett's legs and body early. Pimblett responded with unorthodox movement, wide punches, and sudden bursts of offense that disrupted rhythm but often lacked precision. As the rounds progressed, structure seemed to dissolve. Clean combinations gave way to wild exchanges. Defensive responsibility was frequently abandoned in favor of raw aggression. Moments of brilliance were followed by lapses that left analysts shaking their heads. To some fans, this was electrifying, two fighters refusing to back down, absorbing punishment, and pushing through fatigue. To others, it was frustrating, a fight that appeared to ignore the technical evolution of modern MMA. Terrible display, or timeless entertainment. The most stinging criticism came from veteran fighters and coaches who emphasized fundamentals. Several prominent voices labeled the bout reckless, arguing that it showcased poor fight IQ, questionable defense, and unnecessary damage. From this perspective, the fight represented everything critics fear when entertainment value overshadows skill development. "Heart alone doesn't win championships," one analyst remarked. At this level, you expect discipline. Yet fans quickly pushed back. Many pointed out that MMA has always included fighters who break conventions, and that unpredictability is part of the sport's DNA. They argued that technical perfection is not the sole measure of greatness, especially in a sport born from experimentation and chaos. For these viewers, Gaethje vs. Pimblett was unforgettable precisely because it was messy. Justin Gaethje, experience under the microscope. For Gaethje, the reaction has been particularly complex. As a fighter long praised for evolving from a reckless brawler into a more calculated striker, some observers were surprised by moments where he appeared to abandon patience. Critics questioned whether he underestimated Pimblett or allowed the fight to slip into unnecessary danger. Supporters, however, defended Gaethje's approach, noting that his willingness to engage is what has defined his career and earned him fan favorite status. They argued that even when fights get chaotic, Gaethje's durability, power, and composure still separate him from less experienced opponents. In many ways, the bout reignited an old debate about Gaethje himself: is his legacy built on refinement or on embracing controlled chaos? Paddy Pimblett, star power vs. skill ceiling. No fighter emerged from UFC 324 under a brighter and harsher spotlight than Paddy Pimblett. For his supporters, Pimblett proved he belongs on the big stage. Trading with a seasoned veteran, absorbing punishment, and continuing to push forward reinforced his image as a fearless competitor. For critics, the fight exposed limitations. Questions about his striking defense, footwork, and long-term championship potential resurfaced immediately. Many argued that while Pimblett's confidence and toughness are undeniable, elite-level contenders will exploit technical gaps far more ruthlessly. Yet even detractors acknowledged one truth: Pimblett commands attention. In a sport where visibility matters almost as much as victories, that alone carries weight. The bigger debate: what should MMA be? The fallout from UFC 324 goes beyond two fighters. At its core, the division reflects a philosophical split within MMA fandom. One side prioritizes technical mastery, clean striking, efficient grappling, strategic pacing. The other values emotional intensity, resilience, and moments that leave audiences breathless. Modern MMA has evolved dramatically from its early days, becoming more refined and specialized. But bouts like Gaethje vs. Pimblett remind fans that unpredictability still sells, and still divides. Is a fight bad if it lacks polish but delivers unforgettable moments? Or should elite competition demand a higher standard regardless of excitement? There is no consensus, and perhaps that's the point. UFC's perspective: controversy equals conversation. From a promotional standpoint, UFC 324 achieved exactly what major events aim for. The fight dominated headlines, fueled social media debates, and kept MMA at the center of sports discussion long after the final bell. Love it or hate it, fans were talking and watching. Historically, the UFC has never shied away from divisive fights. Some of the most iconic bouts in company history were initially criticized before being celebrated as classics. Whether Gaethje vs. Pimblett joins that list remains to be seen. What comes next? In the immediate aftermath, attention turns to what this fight means for both men. For Gaethje, the path forward likely remains within the lightweight elite, though calls for more strategic performances may grow louder. For Pimblett, matchmaking becomes crucial. A careful balance between star building and competitive development will define his trajectory. More broadly, UFC 324 will be remembered as a reminder that MMA is not a monolith. It is a sport, and an entertainment platform, where excellence, chaos, discipline, and spectacle often collide. Conclusion: divided, but engaged. Such a terrible display, may be one of the harshest summaries of the Gaethje vs. Pimblett thriller, but it is far from the only one. To some, the fight represented a step backward. To others, it was everything they love about MMA. And in a sport built on extremes, perhaps that division is not a flaw, but a feature. Because if UFC 324 proved anything, it's this: nothing ignites the MMA world quite like a fight that refuses to be universally understood.